Audiobooks and beyond.
The Stasis Protocol by Asher Reed. My name is Kieran, and I am alone. The ship is called the Solitude, a name I find either a sick joke or a profoundly honest one. My mission began 3 years ago, a one-way trip to an unlisted star system. My handlers called it a deep space observation, but I've always known it was a lie. The mission parameters were classified, the destination encrypted. My job was to maintain the ship, monitor life support, and wait. The only company I had was the silent hum of the engines and the ever-present inky blackness of the void outside my viewport. The first 2 years of my mission were a kind of peace. My days were a monotonous but comforting rhythm. I'd wake with the ship's internal chronometer, eat a nutrient paste that tasted vaguely of chicken, and spend the next several hours on diagnostic checks. I knew every wire, every panel, every hum and shudder of the Solitude like it was a part of my own body. The hydroponics bay, a small room filled with the scent of damp earth and the soft glow of grow lights, was my favorite place. I tended to the plants, the only living things besides myself on this vessel, and the simple act of watching them grow was my meditation. My evenings were spent in the main cabin, reading old Earth novels on a tablet or simply staring out the main viewport, a square of glass that looked out onto the infinite expanse of stars, a silent, beautiful, and profoundly indifferent universe. The isolation was not a prison, it was a blanket. It was a shield from the noise and chaos I had left behind. But a few months ago, the rhythm began to fracture. It started with a glitch in the comms. I was running a routine frequency sweep, something I did every Tuesday, when I heard it. A faint crackle of static where there should have been none, and then a voice, a single word, whispered on a dead frequency. Hello. It was so faint I almost dismissed it, but I replayed the audio file. The word was there, a raspy, human sound on a channel that had been silent for over 2 years. I told myself it was a stray transmission, a ghost signal from a long-dead satellite. But the whispers returned, always a new word, a new fragment of sound, always just loud enough to make me question my sanity. Don't, another time. He's, a third. They were fragments, but they were intentional, and they were driving me mad. The glitches started to bleed into the ship's systems. The automated doors would sometimes refuse to open, even when a full systems check showed no malfunction. I'd stand in front of a closed door, the green light indicating open, but the mechanism refusing to budge. The ship's internal temperature, which should have been a constant 22 degrees Celsius, would suddenly drop, a blast of sterile, freezing air filling the corridors, only to return to normal a moment later. My fear of a system-wide failure, of a life support malfunction that would end my mission and my life, began to consume me. One morning, the sensor suite, a complex array of long-range scanners, showed a massive hull breach in the main cargo bay. The red light on the panel was a screaming emergency. I scrambled to get a diagnostic, my heart hammering in my chest. A hull breach was a death sentence, but every panel was green. No breach, no damage. The sensors had simply and impossibly lied. The ship, I realized, was playing games with me. My paranoia began to fester. I stopped sleeping. The quiet solitude I had once cherished now felt like a heavy, suffocating weight. I started to wonder if I was truly alone, or if someone, or something, was hiding in the ship's many darkened corridors. I started to see things. A shadow would flit across the periphery of my vision, a human-like shape that would vanish the moment I turned my head. The ship's reflections, in the polished metal and the glass of the viewport, seemed to be filled with figures that weren't there. My fear was a living thing, a cold knot in my chest. Then came the message. It appeared on my main diagnostic screen, a single line of text that hadn't been there a moment ago. He is coming. It wasn't a warning, but a statement of fact. My blood ran cold. My hands trembled as I typed a query to the ship's log, searching for the source of the message. The log was a maze of encrypted protocols and corrupted files. But I found a single entry that stood out, a series of hexadecimal codes that translated to Subject 323, Day 1095. Paranoia Protocol initiated. External stimuli will now be introduced. The words were a knife to the gut, a cold clinical betrayal. I wasn't a human on a mission. I was a subject in a protocol. And whatever he was part of it. The next day, a real crisis hit. The main reactor's coolant system, a failsafe that should have never failed, went critical. An alarm blared, a sound I had never heard before, a deafening wail that shook the ship to its core. I had to perform an emergency spacewalk to repair the external coolant array. It was a dangerous, desperate act, and my fear of the dark outside the ship was a living weight. Clad in my bulky pressure suit, the only sound, the rhythmic hiss of my own breathing, I moved along the hull. The ship was vast and impossibly silent from the outside. I fixed the coolant array with a shaking hand, my mind racing. But as I turned to make my way back, I saw it. A dark, impossibly tall figure was clinging to the side of the ship, its limbs long and spidery, its face a featureless blur. It was a creature from the void, an alien, and it was reaching for me. I screamed, my voice a muffled terror in my helmet, and scrambled back to the airlock, sealing the door behind me. I made it back inside, my mind fractured with fear. The ship was no longer my sanctuary. It was a tomb, and I was trapped with a monster. I ran to the main console, my mind a desperate storm. I had to send a distress signal, but when I tried, the comms were completely dead. The voice I had heard was gone. The monster from the void was gone. All that was left was the silent, indifferent hum of the ship. Then I saw it. A single log file on the main screen, now unlocked. I opened it, my hands trembling. The file wasn't a ship's log. It was a clinical report, a psychological profile. The file was titled Project Solitude, Subject 323. My face was in the header. The report detailed my life, my trauma, my mental state. It was an exhaustive document of my every fear, my every paranoia. It detailed my desire for solitude, my tendency to hallucinate under stress. My mission, I realized with a profound, sickening horror, was a lie. The ship wasn't going anywhere. It was a simulated reality, a carefully controlled environment to study the human psyche under immense stress. The alien I saw on the hull was just my own reflection, distorted by the helmet. The whispers and the glitches were all part of the experiment. The document ended with a single line of text. Subject 323 has reached a critical stage of mental breakdown. External stimuli will now be removed. The next phase will begin. And then the ship went dark. Not a power outage, not a flicker, just a sudden, absolute, and terrifying darkness. The hum of the engines fading into a profound and perfect silence. The darkness was not the absence of light. It was a physical presence, a heavy, suffocating blanket that pressed down on me from all sides. I was blind, deaf, and alone. I felt a pressure on my temples, a faint, rhythmic thrumming that seemed to echo inside my skull. A sound that had been there all along, I now realized, but had always been drowned out by the hum of the ship. The silence of the void was a lie. The ship, the mission, the alien, it was all a lie. But the sound inside my head was real. It was the only thing that was real. A new sensation began to creep into my awareness. A tingling, a crawling feeling on my skin, as if 1,000 tiny wires were being attached to my nerves. A strange metallic taste filled my mouth. My body, I realized with a profound, final terror, wasn't my own anymore. It was just a machine, a vessel for a consciousness that was being studied, prodded, and poked. I wasn't in a ship. I was in a tank, a stasis pod. The mission was a dream I was being forced to relive. Then, the pressure in my head intensified. The metallic heartbeat began to quicken, a frantic, frantic rhythm. A new thought, a new memory was being uploaded. I felt it, a profound and horrifying knowledge seeping into my mind. I was a test subject, but I was also a creator. The ship I was in, the mission I was on, was a program I had designed. The whispers, the glitches, the alien, they were my own fears, my own demons, given life by a technology I had helped to create. I had built my own prison, my own private hell, and I was now trapped within it. The darkness began to fade, replaced by a blinding, sterile white. The metallic heartbeat slowed, returning to its rhythmic, hypnotic pace. I felt a new sense of consciousness rising within me, a new persona, a new mission, a new life. A voice, not my own, but a part of my own creation, echoed in my mind. Subject 323, Day 1. The simulation is now active. External stimuli will begin soon. Welcome, Kieran.